My name's Andreas and I work as a chief architect as part of the APAC CTO office, and I'm based in Sydney, Australia. I'll introduce you to a methodology based on the Open Practice Library. My colleague and friend Ahilan Ponuswamy and I have put together for organizations who want to revamp and redefine the technology operating models. So Ahilan and myself haven't come up with that methodology. It's basically based on the review and close interaction and collaboration with industry players. We have the head of product at Optus, which is a telco in Australia. We have people from Woolworths, the head of architecture for people systems at Woolworths, which is a retailer. Then we have people that lead engineering functions at Nasdaq and Macquarie Bank. For Ahilan and myself, it was important that this is not something we put together. We wanted to have real industry experience flowing into this topic, into this book, so that we basically make it applicable for all the organizations out there. So I'll introduce you now to the workflow or the methodology as such. First, we start off with a framework that defines the different streams of an operating model. So here, let me call it out: technology operating model for cloud and edge. So usually we give the power to the organization. There is no need to have only 3 streams or have 3 streams. You can have 2 streams, you can have 4 streams, but we find the power of divide and conquer pretty useful because the operating model itself can be a fairly complex topic. So the stream number 1 we call leadership and architecture. The leadership and architecture stream has topics such as customer, budget, funding, team topologies, risk and compliance, or business value. Like, how is business value defined in your organization? Now, the second stream I call platform and tenant experience. And as you can see, this is already a bit more technical. Tenant experience. So dimensions in that stream might be called platform as such. What is a platform? How do you define a platform? What features and functions does the platform need to provide? Tenant onboarding or customer onboarding. So if you are a platform engineering team, then your customers might be your developers in your organization. Customer onboarding. Then we have, let's say, documentation and samples. For example, we have more technical topics like disaster recovery and SLIs and SLOs that are associated with those SLIs. We have the dependency management, for example, and things like this. So the important bit to understand here is that there is no predefined set of those have to be the dimensions. You as an organization define what the dimensions of your operating model are. And as a third stream, then we recommend to think about workloads. Workloads can be applications, can be services, can be whatever you use to identify those things that run on top of your platform. And those workloads can further be categorized in inner loop dimensions and outer loop dimensions. And this is just a standard development process type inner outer loop. And things like this could be software supply chain design, guidelines, code reviews, tooling, CI/CD workflows, things like that, or could be product management practices. Product management. As the outer loop, we have things like data gravity remediation, data gravity remediation, API endpoints, or let's say CI/CD tooling, A/B testing. Again, you as an organization define what that looks like. So as you can see, that can be fairly comprehensive already. And if you need help starting it, Red Hat has actually functions in our organization that help our customers define all those streams and work with them. So for example, this one would be something the BVP team can help you define and lead for a while. When I say lead, I always recommend that organizations need to own their technology operating model for cloud and edge themselves. You cannot outsource that because this is so important. This is too important actually because it's directly linked in a digital economy with your organizational capabilities as well. So the business value team, business value practice team can help you define your leadership and architecture stream. Then here in the platform and tenant experience, we have a global flight path team. And this flight path team has across many different industries, you name it, aviation, finance, telco, actually gone out and defined the tenant and platform experience for our customers. And those leading and best practices flow directly through the flight path team into your organization if you engage the flight path team. And then lastly, we have the workload bit, and that's standard practice for our Red Hat partners and Red Hat Global Services. Those service implementation teams from our partners have global experience, again, across a multitude of industries and bring those leading practices actually to you and can help you to onboard faster in order to develop your technology operating model dimension and streams. So in summary, I've given you a bit of an overview of what those dimensions look like. Now, the second step is now once you have your streams and your dimensions defined is actually how do you build those dimensions out? Now, let's just say you have the customer dimension as a starting point. So if you start off with the customer dimension, then that team that owns that dimension needs to now define the current state architecture, or current state as such. If you don't want to call it architecture, then the transition states and the target state. So usually the transition states come out once you define your target state, because it'll become very clear then how easy it is to reach the target state. If you can reach the target state in one hop, in one go, in one iteration, in one increment, then there's no reason to define a transition architecture. But if you have, let's say, dependencies or multiple things to deliver along the way incrementally, then you might want to define your transition states. And that basically just means you define those and then you put the different target and transition states in your backlog and then assign that in standard backlog grooming and sprint planning fashion. If you then have dependencies across multiple streams, then you can use a release train type concept where you have different streams and different teams implementing the different dimensions in those streams, collaborate together and basically release those dependencies so that the functional dimensions can actually work, and you call those dependencies all out. So I've given you now a bit of an overview of what a technology operating model implementation for your organization could look like. I hope you found this useful, and I'm looking forward for your feedback and further questions. Thank you.